Hello, Cyril Jackson School. It's Miss Spalding here again. I am so honored to be part of your Black History Month event. And Miss Boyle, thanks for the invitation. This month, you would like to look at why is Black history important. Before we can look at why it's important, we need to understand what is history. Do any of you know what history is? I'll give you some time to think about it, and then I'll shed some light on what history is. History, simply put, is studying the events of the past, human affairs, the affairs of cultures, countries, and in this case, Black history. But if you're in Britain, it means Black history in Britain. And without Black history, you're missing a big part of British history, because Black history is part of British history. Black people and those from different ethnicities have been part of British history for centuries. And how do I know that? Because a historian, David Olusoga, documented it. And not just him, because he's found this information by reading archives and informations that other custodians of history preserved and protected, no matter how dire or upsetting that history is. It's good to preserve history as it was, because many times we can learn from past mistakes and improve upon things in order not to make the same mistakes in the future and to make lives better. That's the purpose of history and delving into history. So he's got a new book out now for children, Black and British, a short essential history. And it's brilliant because it looks at Roman times, Tudors, the Stuarts, Victorians, and late Georgians, early Georgians. It looks at the transatlantic enslavement of people taken from Africa. It also looks at the scramble from Africa. I have another book with me, and this will show you why it's important to look at Black history. Because history is written sometimes by those in charge, and they will paint a different picture of the history of the people they might have ruled over. In this case, Britain had a vast empire. So this is from David's research into history. It's more meaty, gives you more information. And this is Victorians, so this is looking more at Victorians. It does mention the Victorians here, and I'll look at the account in this one, the scramble for Africa, and it mentions that they needed new resources, new materials. They wanted to expand the European empire. So it wasn't just Britain, it was different European countries. And there's a statement in it I read, but because I'm much older, I understand that it's not fully accurate. In many parts of Africa, the British established colonies relatively easy, but against the Zulus of southern Africa, armed with only spears and shields, they decided to fight. They decided to fight. The British were better equipped. It doesn't say what they had. It mentioned the Zulus had spears and shields. Didn't mention the Maxim machine gun, which fires up to, I think, 600 rounds. Imagine a machine gun against spears. I wouldn't say that's easy. And these lands that they were also deciding to make new territories of Europe had inhabitants. I'll show you here. The pink ones are areas that Britain took over. So you have Egypt, Sudan, Somaliland, British Somaliland, Kenya, Uganda, Rhodesia, South Rhodesia, so we know Zimbabwe, Zambia, South Africa, but again we know that the Africans took that back. Nigeria, Gold Coast, Sierra Leone, Gambia, and that was just Africa. So Stuart Hall mentions that we, so black British people in England, are there because British ancestry went to, people of British ancestry went into these lands. So in a sense, you made them part of your empire. So black history is part of British history, and it's essential to look at it. No matter how disturbing or upsetting it is still part of your history. And it's for this reason why it's good to know about your history, because then it doesn't show that it was just simple. And in this book it mentions the Scramble for Africa as well. So in 1870, only 10% of African land was controlled by Europeans. And within 30 years, only 10% controlled by African. The rest belonged to Europe. Britain had been especially successful. 45 million people, or 1/3 of all Africans, became British colonial subjects. And being a subject of a colony, Jamaica was a colony, you're considered a British subject, a British citizen. You're told that Britain is your motherland. So for me, black history is important because it is British history. It is the history of empire. I'm not a historian, and I'd love to go into so much, but I don't want to do too long a video that will bore you children. But I'll ask you, the London Museum of Docklands, there's a section there by the wall that talks about the golden age of sugar and the prosperity. It even has my tiny island of Jamaica. And it mentions 1/4 of the wealth that Britain had at that time came from rum, sugar, and coffee. 1/4. It doesn't tell you where they got the labor from. The labor force was not paid. And when Jamaicans fought, and many from the Caribbean islands fought against slavery, the enslavement of people taken from that scramble from Africa, brought to foreign lands, they weren't compensated after years of free labor that enriched Britain. But the owners who lost their laborers were compensated. It's estimated it's 20 million pounds back then, which took over 100+ years to pay back, because from 1838 onwards, that debt was only cleared in 2015. Can you imagine? And the people who labored, many died, because the life on plantation, the expectancy of someone enslaved was about 7 years. As an adult, I would not work for anyone who after 7 years I might not live to spend my money, but these people weren't paid. So that's why it's good to look at black history. It's part of British history, no matter how dark it looks. And many times it's not written accurately, so that's why people have to share their history. That's why it's important to celebrate at Black History Month events. Please have a look at this book. I've given a copy to Miss Boyle, and learn more about not only black history, because there's many people throughout the empire that contributed and yet aren't present. My grandfather contributed, Second World War. He volunteered. He was a soldier in Jamaica. He came. And yet at the victory parades in London, no blacks were allowed. So that part of history, it would look like, oh, well, none of the black or ethnic people from different parts of the Commonwealth contributed, but they did. But they weren't part of the parade. So it's important. Here's another book to look at, 100 Great Black Britons. This is also vital. Another book to mention is Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. Can anyone be born a crime? That you can also think about. It's for young readers, because some countries' laws meant that blacks weren't meant to mix with whites. That is why black history is important. It's important to know why certain levels of discrimination continues today, whether it's my hair, people not accepting that it should be worn this way. It should be chemically restrained and straight. It is good to understand your history. When you understand your history, you understand why you're in Britain today. Thank you. All the best, students. Bye.